The wine stains spread across her white dress. She refused to change it. Listen, K-fam. Zuri Bennett is a forensic auditor. Black, sharp, her father's old watch heavy on her wrist. 6 months ago, a Korean man hired her in secret. Han Tae-jun. They call him the Quiet One. A black dragon tattoo climbs his neck, up behind his ear, above the collar. He wanted the truth about the Han-Beaumont merger. She found shell companies, bribes, a rot with a familiar name buried inside. Then came the gala in Manhattan, chandeliers, diamonds, old money watching a stranger in a stained dress. Celeste Beaumont lifted her glass. Red wine ran down white silk. "Opportunista," she hissed. She ordered them to throw Zuri out. "Ayu," but Tae-jun crossed the room. He caught Celeste's wrist. His voice went cold and low. "You just spilled wine on her dress?" The whole ballroom held its breath, and what he did with the next 60 seconds, Omo, it changed everything. I'm telling you now, this one hurt to watch. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. Zuri Bennett had the number in her mouth before the elevator finished climbing. 41 million. That was the whole. That was what did not exist inside the Han Beaumont books, no matter how many times the auditors upstairs swore it did. She stepped out on the 52nd floor, and the glass swallowed the city behind her. Nobody looked up. Good. She wanted nobody to look up. She wanted the badge on the lanyard to read the same lie it had read for 6 months, outside consultant, compliance, temporary, while the real name of her job sat locked in a drawer in her chest. The forensic accountant does not walk fast. She walks like the building already belongs to her. Zuri had learned that from her father, a long time ago, in a smaller building, before the building took him. The conference room on 52 had one chair pulled out. Han Tae-jun sat in it. He did not stand when she entered. He tilted his head an inch, the way a man tilts his head when he is deciding whether the thing in front of him is a tool or a threat. The dragon tattoo climbed the right side of his neck and disappeared behind his ear, black ink over pale skin, and it moved when he swallowed. "You found something," he said. Not a question. She hated that he could read her. "I found a company," Zuri said. She set the tablet on the table and slid it 2 feet across the glass. "It buys freight nobody ships. It pays a port in Busan that closed in 2019. It sends the money to Zurich, and Zurich sends it home." Home to who? That's the part I don't have yet. Tae-jun looked at the tablet. He did not touch it. Men like him never touch the evidence. Zuri had noticed that in the first week, the way he kept his hands clean, the way he made other people carry the paper. His hand rested flat on the glass beside the device, and there was a small scar between the thumb and the first finger, a white seam she had catalogued without meaning to. 6 months, he said. 6 months. "I hired you to close the merger, not to open it. You hired me to tell you the truth about the merger." She kept her voice level. Level was the only weapon she trusted in this room. "The truth is, somebody built a second set of numbers under the first set. You want me to sign off? I sign off. The deal goes through. And in a year, the second set eats the first one, and you lose everything with your name on it. That what you want?" The Quiet One earned his nickname. He let the silence sit until it had weight. "No," he said finally. "Then let me finish." She pulled the tablet back toward her and woke it. 6 months ago, you handed me a merger the whole street was calling clean. Han Group buys the Beaumont ports, the Beaumont debt, the Beaumont name, and your 2 houses become 1 house. Everybody signs. Everybody smiles. Her finger moved across the glass, and the numbers came up in columns. green over green. Week 2, I found a supplier in Incheon that invoices you for cold storage. Fine. Except the warehouse burned down in 2017, and nobody rebuilt it. You are paying $200,000 a month to keep meat cold inside a hole in the ground. Taejun's jaw shifted. He was listening the way a man listens for the second footstep behind him. Week 9, she went on. A logistics firm in Rotterdam. Real building, real staff, wrong math. Every euro that goes in comes out 4 cents heavier and lands somewhere I can't follow yet. Week 14, a charity, a children's charity, Taejun. It has a board, it has a gala, it has a tax number, and it has never in its life given a single one to a single child. It exists to move your money and call it kindness. My money, he said. That's what the ledger says. That's what the ledger is built to say. She turned the tablet face down because she had learned that the number lands harder when you take it away. Somebody is running a second company inside your company. Same buildings, same names, different purpose. And they have been running it long enough that when the merger closes, it stops being a crime hiding inside Han Group and starts being the foundation Han Beaumont is standing on. You won't be able to cut it out. It'll be load-bearing. For the first time in 6 months, she watched Han Taejun look tired. He turned his head toward the window. Manhattan burned white below them. Somewhere down there was a courthouse where, 19 years ago, a jury had decided her father was a thief. Zuri did not look at the window. She looked at the door behind Taejun, the one she had watched 2 men in gray suits walk through that morning and never walk back out. Who else is on this floor? She said. My people. Your people or Beaumont's people? Something crossed his face. It was gone before she could name it. There is no difference yet, Taejun said. That is the problem with a merger. Until it closes, everyone is everyone's people. She gathered the tablet. Her reflection came up off the black screen, and behind her reflection, faint, the reflection of him watching her gather it. The watch on her wrist caught the overhead light, old steel, older leather, a scratched face that had stopped keeping perfect time the day her father died and that she wound anyway, every morning, out of a stubbornness she did not explain to anyone. I need the original incorporation filings, she said. Not the copies your legal team scans and cleans. The originals. Paper, if paper exists. Why paper? Because paper remembers who touched it. He studied her for a moment longer than was comfortable. Then he stood, and standing he was enormous, and the smoking jacket he wore even at 10 in the morning fell into place like it had been sewn onto him. You'll have them tonight, he said. My driver will bring a box to your apartment. No. Too fast. She heard it come out too fast, and she saw him hear it too. No drivers. I'll come get them. You don't want my people knowing where you live. I don't want anybody knowing where I live. He nodded once, slow, and she could not tell if he had accepted the reason she gave or the reason she did not. She was at the elevator when he said her name. Not the badge name, her name. Bennett. She turned. The company that buys freight nobody ships. He had not moved from the table. What is it called? She had rehearsed this moment for 6 months without knowing it would come. She had built a wall in her own throat and stood behind it every single day so that this exact word would not fall out of her mouth in front of this exact man. Meridian Holdings, she said. It was a lie the size of a building. The company was not called Meridian Holdings. The company was called Beaumont Bridge Capital, and Beaumont Bridge Capital was the same name, letter for letter, that had appeared on the falsified loan documents that sent Malcolm Bennett to a cell where his heart gave out 8 months later, and she knew that name the way you know the shape of the thing that ate your family, and she was not yet, not in this glass box on the 52nd floor with 2 men gone missing behind a door, going to hand it to the Coriano who signed her checks. The elevator opened. She got in. The doors closed on his face, and his face gave her nothing. Down. The city rose around the glass car. Zuri let out the breath she had been holding since the 52nd floor, and it fogged the mirror. Meridian Holdings. She would have to build Meridian Holdings now. She would have to make it real enough on paper to survive a week, because he would look, of course he would look, and when he found nothing, she would say she'd been wrong about the name and right about the money. Buy time, buy a week. In a week, she could get to the originals herself and find the thread that tied Beaumont Bridge to the man with the frozen blue eyes, whose daughter was going to marry into this empire in 11 days. 11 days. That was the other number in her mouth. The lobby was marble and armed men who pretended to be doormen. She crossed it the way she crossed every room, unhurried, spine set, and she did not exhale again until the revolving door spat her onto the sidewalk and the noise of the actual world hit her like water. She walked 6 blocks before she stopped for the coffee she did not want, because stopping let her check the glass of the shop window for anyone stopping behind her. Nobody stopped. That was the thing about being followed correctly. Nobody stops. Her apartment was in a building that used to be a garment factory, 4 flights up, no elevator, 1 lock her landlord knew about, and 2 locks he did not. She climbed the stairs with the coffee going cold in her hand, and her keys already threaded through her fingers, and she was on the 3rd landing when she saw that the light under her door was on. She had left it off. She always left it off. She had been leaving it off for 19 years, since a night when a man in a suit came to a different door and her mother made a sound Zuri had never heard a person make before. She set the coffee down on the stair. Silent. She slid 1 key into the first hidden lock and turned it 0.5 millimeter at a time until she felt the bolt clear, and then she stopped, because she could hear it now. A drawer. The specific sound of her file drawer. The one that stuck. Being worked open by somebody who did not know it stuck. Every instinct her father put in her said run. Every instinct her father's death put in her said no. She pushed the door. The man was at her desk with his back to her and a penlight in his teeth, and both hands inside her drawer, and he was fast, faster than she was, because before she had finished the single step across the threshold he was already turning, already up, already between her and the window, with a stillness that was worse than any lunge. Cropped hair, a scar splitting 1 eyebrow into 2 pieces, gray suit, black gloves, and it was the gloves that told her everything, because a burglar takes what he can sell, and this man had come for something that would only ever be worth anything to the people who did not want it read. Wrong apartment, Zuri said. He looked at her, the way you look at a variable you failed to account for. Miss Bennet, his English had an accent she placed instantly and filed. You should have taken the car. Her drawer hung open behind him, her father's case files, the 19 years, the photographs, the trial transcript she'd stolen page by page from a courthouse basement, the yellow legal pad where she'd written the name Beaumont Bridge Capital 800 times, like a prayer or a curse. Those are mine, she said. These, the man said, not looking down at them, belong to whoever finds them first. He moved for the window, she moved for the drawer. They arrived at the same instant and his gloved hand closed on her wrist, the wrist with the watch, her father's watch, and he twisted, and pain went white up her arm, and the watch face cracked against the edge of the desk with a sound so small it should not have been able to break anything in her. But it broke something. Zuri stopped being careful. She drove the heel of her free hand up into the split eyebrow and felt it open wider and heard him grunt, and she got a fist of the case files, her father, and she pulled, and paper tore, and half of 19 years came away in her hand, and half went with him out the window and onto the fire escape, and down into the dark between the buildings, fast, gone, a gray suit folding into the city that had never once been on her side. The fire escape rang once under his weight, and then went quiet. She got to the window in time to see the last of him, a shape dropping through 2 floors of shadow, unhurried even in flight, a man who had done this in other cities to other people who kept things in drawers. Below, an engine turned over in the alley and pulled away without headlights. She memorized the sound of it. She had a good memory for the sounds of things leaving. She did not chase him onto the fire escape. She was not stupid. She stood in the middle of her own ransacked apartment with torn paper in her fist and her father's watch hanging cracked and dead on her bruised wrist, and she made herself breathe, and she made herself count what was still on the desk. The trial transcript, half. The photographs, gone. The legal pad, still there, face down, and she turned it over and the top page said, Beaumont Bridge Capital, in her own hand, and under it, circled 3 times, a date, 11 days from now, and under the date, 1 word she had written and not let herself think about since. Wedding. He had been in her drawer for the transcript. Not the money, not the merger, the transcript, which meant somebody knew that Zuri Bennett, forensic auditor, outside consultant, temporary, was also Zuri Bennett, daughter of the man Beaumont Bridge Capital had buried, and that somebody had sent a professional up 4 flights to take the connection out of her hands before she could put it into anyone else's. Only 3 people knew her father's name was tied to that company. She was 1. Her brother Isaiah was 2. And she had, 40 minutes ago, on the 52nd floor, in a glass room with a door that ate 2 men, given the 3rd the false name to keep him from being the 3rd. Meridian Holdings. She sat down slowly in the chair the man in gloves had not bothered to push in. The watch ticked once, 1 broken tick, an accident of the impact, and then went still again, stopped. The way it had stayed stopped for 19 years. At 8:14, the hour her father had once told her, laughing, was the exact minute she was born. Zuri unclasped it. She turned it over. The back was steel, dented now, and the dent had knocked something loose inside the case, so that when she held it to her ear and shook it, there was a sound that a watch this old and this dead had no business making. A rattle. Something inside the watch that was not the watch. She set the dead watch on the desk, face up, and made herself leave the rattle for later, because the rattle was a door and she was not ready to open a second door tonight. Her phone was in her coat. She dug it out and thumbed a message to the only number she never saved under a real name. You okay? She wrote. The 3 dots came up fast. Isaiah always answered fast. Somewhere across the river, in a sublet full of other people's routers and his own stolen quiet, her brother was awake, because her brother was always awake. Fine. Why? He wrote back. Somebody was in my apartment, took the photos, took half the transcript. The dots stopped. Started, stopped. When his answer came, it was 1 word. Coming. No, she typed, and she typed it 3 times, because he would argue. No, they know my address. If they know mine, they're guessing at yours. Stay dark. She hesitated, then added the thing that mattered. They came for Dad, not the merger. Dad. This time the dots did not come back for a long minute, and she pictured him taking off the black glasses and pressing the heels of his hands into his eyes, the way he did, the way their father used to do. Then, they tied the name to you. Someone did, she wrote. Who else knew, he wrote, and it was not an accusation. It was the same question she had already asked the empty room, and she gave him the same answer she had given herself. You, me, and I gave the boss a fake name today to keep him off it. Good, Isaiah wrote. Keep it fake. Then, after a beat, the watch still on your wrist? She looked at it, cracked and steel and dead on the desk. Yes, she lied, because the watch was a thing she and Isaiah did not talk about carefully, and tonight was not careful. "Wind it," he wrote. He wrote it every time. It was a joke between them, and it was not a joke at all. Dad said, "Wind it." She set the phone face down beside the watch and looked at the two dead things side by side and felt something in her chest pull tight enough to hurt. Then she reached for the desk lamp with a hand that had, at some point in the last 5 minutes, started to shake, and she pulled the loose paper toward her. The surviving half, the torn edges, the pages the man in gloves had not gotten his fist all the way around, and she smoothed the first sheet flat under the light. It was the transcript. Page 41. She knew it by the coffee ring in the corner she had made 2 winters ago. A line of it had survived the tearing, and she read the line she had read 1,000 times and had never once been able to read without her jaw setting. The prosecutor asking her father to explain a loan he had never signed, to a company he had never heard of, called Beaumont Bridge Capital. Under the printed line, in the margin, in her own handwriting from a year ago, she had written a note to herself and forgotten it. She read it now, like a stranger had left it there. Who incorporated BBC? Find the first signature. First signature is the whole case. The first signature, the originals. Paper, if paper exists. The exact thing she had asked Taejun for 2 hours ago on the 52nd floor, before she knew someone would come for the same paper first, before she knew the wedding was 11 days out, and the man who built the company that killed her father was about to become the co-owner of the empire that signed her checks. She pulled the second sheet, then the third. She built them into an order on the desk, torn edge to torn edge, the way you rebuild anything somebody has tried to take from you, slowly, out of spite, refusing to let the gap be the last word. And because it was the only thing left in the world that she knew how to do, she began to read. The invitation came printed on cardstock so thick it could stop a knife, and Zuri held it at the top of the marble stairs like it might bite her. Beaumont Han engagement celebration. 9 days out from the wedding now, not 11. The clock had been eating days while she read court transcripts by the light of a broken lamp. She had almost torn the card in half when it slid under her door that morning. Instead, she'd steamed her father's watch back onto her wrist, the cracked face against her pulse, and told herself the only way to find the first signature was to walk into the room where every hand that ever signed anything would be standing with a glass. So here she was. Ballroom on the 41st floor of a hotel that charged by the breath. Chandeliers dropping light like something spilled. 200 guests, she counted them the way she counted everything, in clean rows, because rows told you when one was missing. Nobody had sent a car this time. She'd made sure of that. The dress was white, long, plain, cut to disappear so her face could do the work. She wore it because white photographed clean on the room's cameras, and because a woman in white in a sea of black tuxedos is remembered, and Zuri wanted to be remembered by exactly the right person for exactly the right minute. Everything else about her was quiet. Small gold at the ears, the old watch, a scar on her left palm she kept turned toward her own body. She took the last 3 steps down into the noise. A waiter offered champagne. She took it and did not drink it. A glass in the hand is a shield. A glass at the lips is a distraction. Her father taught her that at weddings they were never really invited to. Back when he still wore the watch, back when he still had a name people said out loud. Across the floor, she found him. Han Taejun stood near the windows with his back half to the room, which told her more than a file could. A man who turns his back on 200 people either fears none of them or owns all of them. The dragon on his neck showed above the collar when he tipped his head to listen to whoever was talking at him. He hadn't seen her yet. Good. She needed the room to see her first. She moved along the edge of it, not toward him, around. The Beaumonts were easy to find. They were the ones the room bent toward, the way water bends toward the drain. Victor Beaumont, big and gray and planted, one large hand around the head of a dark cane, holding court with the patience of a man who has never once been kept waiting. Beside him, the daughter. Celeste Beaumont wore red like a warning label. Blonde hair set so precisely it looked poured. Diamonds at her throat that caught every chandelier in the room and threw the light back sharpened. She was laughing at something, and her laugh reached across 40 feet of ballroom and landed on Zuri like a hand on the shoulder. Zuri knew the name before she knew the face. Beaumont. She had carried that name in her mouth for 19 years, like a stone she couldn't spit out. And here it was, wearing a couture gown and drinking Bordeaux, 9 days from marrying into the exact empire Zuri had been quietly gutting for 6 months. She kept her face flat. Flat was the whole job. "You're the auditor." The voice came from her left. Victor. He'd crossed the floor without her clocking it, cane and all. And that was a note she filed hard. The old man moved when he chose to, and chose not to most of the time, so you'd forget he could. His eyes were the blue of something under ice. "I'm a guest," Zuri said. "You're the auditor," he said again, like a man correcting a typo. "Taejun's little project. 6 months of it." He smiled without any part of his face agreeing. "You've cost this merger a great deal of time." "Time's cheap," she said. "It's the 41 million that's expensive." She watched the number land. It didn't move his mouth. It moved something behind the eyes, a small shutter dropping, and that was worth the whole trip. Now she knew the number meant something to him personally. Numbers only frighten the people they belong to. "Careful," Victor said softly, and tapped the cane once against the marble, and walked away with the ease of a man ending a phone call. Zuri exhaled slow. One down, she turned to find the daughter already on her. Up close, Celeste smelled like money spent on smelling expensive. She had the champagne glass in one gloved hand and a full glass of red in the other, and Zuri's eyes went to the red the way you watch a lit match near your hair. "So you're her," Celeste said, bright, delighted. The delight was the dangerous part. The one who's been whispering in Taejun's ear. Everybody's been dying to meet the little bookkeeper who thinks she found a hole. "Forensic accountant," Zuri said. "Sure." Celeste's smile widened. All teeth, no warmth behind them. Same thing to the people cleaning this floor. 2 women near the ice sculpture had stopped talking to watch, then 4. The room was an organism, and it had felt a change in the water. Celeste felt it too. Zuri saw her register the audience and grow by an inch, feeding on it. "Can I tell you something, sweetheart?" Celeste said, stepping in close. Close enough that the diamonds threw light straight into Zuri's eyes. "Men like Taejun collect strays. It makes them feel generous. He'll parade you around, let you play detective, and in 9 days he'll be standing at an altar, and you'll be back to counting other people's money in a room with no windows." She sipped the red. "You're not a partner. You're a receipt he hasn't thrown out yet." Every word of it was designed to make Zuri flinch. Zuri had been built, over 19 years, specifically so she would not. "You practiced that," Zuri said. Something flickered across Celeste's face. She had practiced it. And being seen practicing it was the one thing the daughter of Victor Beaumont could not stand. "Excuse me?" "In a mirror," Zuri said, even, almost kind. "The rhythm's too clean. You've said it to somebody before, and it worked, so you kept it." She let a beat fall. "It's not working now." The 4 watching became 8. Somewhere the string quartet kept sawing away, oblivious, the only thing in the room not paying attention. Celeste's knuckles went white inside the glove around the wine glass. She smiled harder. The smile was a wall now, holding something back that wanted out. "You know what your problem is," Celeste said, quiet, so only the front row of the audience could feed on it. "You came in here in that little white dress, thinking clean makes you look honest. She tilted her head, and the tilt was the tell, the wind-up. "Let me help you match the rest of us." She turned her wrist. The red came out of the glass in one long fold, unhurried, almost graceful, and it went down the front of the white dress, from the collarbone to the hip. Warm. Zuri felt it soak through to her skin, felt it run into the waistband, felt the whole room inhale at once. She did not step back. Stepping back was flinching with your feet. The wine spread across the white, in a shape like a country nobody wanted. It ran over the plain minimalist line of the dress, pooled at the seam, dripped once, twice, off the hem onto the marble between them. A single drop caught the edge of the old watch on her wrist, and she felt that one more than all the rest, the red touching her father's watch, and something in her jaw locked so hard it hummed. Celeste stepped back to admire it. She actually smiled with her whole face now, the wall down, delight all the way through. "Oh no," she said, in a voice pitched for the cameras. "How clumsy of me." The room did not breathe. 8 watchers had become 50. Phones had come up. Zuri saw the little black rectangles rising all around the edge of the floor like reeds, and she filed that too, cold, because footage was footage, and it cut both ways, and she was on every lens now in a stained white dress, looking like exactly the mess Celeste needed her to look like. A waiter started forward with a cloth. Celeste stopped him with one raised glove. "Don't," Celeste said. "Let's not reward it." She turned to the nearest man in a headset, security, gray-suited, an earpiece, and her voice went flat and bored, the voice of someone ordering a return. "Get her out." She wasn't invited. She's an employee who wandered upstairs, and she's making a scene, and she's bleeding cheap wine all over Mr. Beaumont's floor. She looked back at Zuri and lowered her voice to a blade. "Go back to your windowless room, sweetheart. Take the receipt with you." The security man put a hand near Zuri's elbow. Not on it, near it, deciding. Zuri looked down at the ruin of the dress, then up. She had a choice here, and she knew the exact shape of it. She could take the cloth, take the exit, keep the low profile she'd protected for 6 months, walk out with the room laughing, and the wedding still 9 days off, and her cover intact. Or she could stay standing in a stained white dress in front of 50 cameras and refuse to be small. "No," she said. "Just that. To the cloth, to the exit, to all of it." She turned her stained side deliberately toward the room. Chin level, let them look, let the lenses drink it. A woman refusing to be cleaned is a harder thing to laugh at than a woman crying, and Zuri had learned young that dignity you keep on purpose is a weapon nobody can take, because they can only take the kind you drop. The security man's hand hovered. Celeste's smile faltered at the edges. This wasn't in the script. The receipt was supposed to leave. "I said get her." A hand closed around Celeste's wrist. Not hard. That was the thing Zuri would remember. Not a grab, a closing. Long fingers, a steel watch, a scarred web between thumb and forefinger, she'd seen once before, across a table on the 52nd floor. The hand closed around the wrist that still held the empty wine glass, and it stopped everything. Celeste's mouth, the security man's decision, the string quartet finally faltering into silence, as if even the music finally noticed. Han Tae-jun had crossed the entire ballroom, and nobody had watched him do it, because everybody had been watching her burn. He didn't look at the room. He looked at the glass in Celeste's hand, then at the red running off the hem of the white dress, then back at the glass, reading it the slow way he read everything, the way that made men sweat while they waited for him to finish. Celeste tried to laugh. It came out with a crack in the middle. "Tae-jun, darling, it was an accident. Say it again." His voice was low, and it carried anyway, the way a dropped temperature carries. He still had her wrist. He still had not raised his eyes above the level of the glass. "The accident." "Say how it happened." My hand, your hand. The dragon showed full on his neck as he finally lifted his head and looked at her, and the look was worse than anything he could have said, flat and dark and completely without heat, the look of a man doing arithmetic. 50 phones had become 100. Victor Beaumont had turned from across the floor. Kane stopped mid-tap. The whole organism of the room had swung to face the small circle of marble where a stained woman stood, and a blonde woman shook inside a red gown, and a quiet man held a wrist and would not let it go. "You just spilled wine on her dress," Taejun said. It wasn't a question, and it wasn't loud, and it landed on the ballroom like the floor had dropped an inch. He said it the way you'd read a charge into a record. He said it so the 100 phones would have it clean. He said it looking at Celeste but angling his chin, just slightly, so his voice would reach the man with the cane, and the man with the cane would understand that something had just changed in a room the Beaumonts had walked into believing they owned. Celeste's glove had gone bloodless around the empty glass. Her mouth opened. Nothing usable came out. Zuri stood very still in the wreck of the white dress, the red drying tacky against her father's watch, and she watched Han Tae-jun hold the wrist of the woman he was supposed to marry in 9 days, and she understood. The way you understand a floor is about to give, that whatever this was, it was no longer a party. "Tae-jun," Victor Beaumont said from across the room, and for the first time all night, the old man's voice had a hairline in it. "Let go of my daughter." Tae-jun did not let go. He looked at the wine on the floor, the single drop still hanging off the hem, and he waited, and the whole room waited with him. 100 lenses steady, the quartet silent, 200 guests holding one breath, and Zuri felt the number she'd carried for 19 years finally start to tip. Taejun looked at Victor across the marble, and he still did not release Celeste's wrist. "In a moment," he said. His voice stayed low. It carried anyway. A room of 200 leaned toward it, because a room always leans toward the quiet man when the quiet man finally speaks. He let go, not fast. He opened his fingers one at a time, like he was setting down something he'd decided he didn't want, and Celeste's arm dropped, and the empty glass swung on 2 fingers, and she pressed it to her chest, as if it had been the one attacked. Then, Tae-jun turned to Zuri, and this is where the whole floor tilted. He took the pocket square out of his jacket, white silk, folded into a sharp little blade at his chest 1 second, open in his palm the next. He went down, not all the way, not a knee to the marble, but he bent, and he pressed the silk to the wine soaking the front of her white dress, at the hip, where the stain ran darkest, and he wiped. Once, slow. A man in a $10,000 tux, blotting red wine off a woman a bodyguard had just been ordered to drag out the door. Nobody breathed. 100 phones climbed higher. "It won't come out," Zuri said, flat, almost kind. "I know," Taejun said. He kept wiping anyway, 3 seconds more, and then he folded the ruined silk and slid it back into his breast pocket, the red side out, like a boutonniere made of her humiliation, so everyone in the room could see he was choosing to wear it. He straightened. He looked at the stain on his own cuff, the one on his right wrist, the little bloom of red on white he'd been carrying all night without a word. He turned that cuff up so the light caught it. 2 stains now, hers and his, matched. "Han," Victor said, and the name cracked coming out of him. He came forward 2 steps, Bengala striking marble, once, hard. "This is a party, my daughter's party, whatever business you think you have. Won-soo." Tae-jun didn't raise his voice for it. He said the name toward the edge of the crowd, and a man detached from the wall near the service doors. Gray suit, thin folder under one arm, the kind of face nobody photographs because nobody remembers it's there. The lawyer. He'd been standing by the exit the entire time, which meant Tae-jun had walked into his own engagement party knowing exactly where the fire escape was. Taejun took his phone from his jacket, held it out. "Screen up. Now," he said. One word. "Yabaseo." The room did not hear, because he didn't say it into the phone. He said it to the lawyer, and the lawyer already had his own phone against his ear, already nodding, already walking backward toward the doors, with the folder open now against his chest. And here is the thing about an empire, K-fam. It does not fall like a building. It falls like a phone tree. It falls in the time it takes 6 people in 6 rooms to answer a call they've been dreading for months. Now what? Celeste laughed. The laugh came out wrong, half a note too high. Now what, Taejun? You'll ruin your own engagement to defend the help? He looked at her. For a long second he just looked at her, and whatever he found there made his jaw set. "There is no engagement," he said. The words went out across the marble and hit the crowd, and the crowd made a sound. One sound. A single inhale from 200 throats. Somewhere near the bar, a champagne flute slipped, and the shatter was the loudest thing in the room. Celeste's smile stayed. That was the horror of it. Her mouth kept the shape while everything behind it fell out. "You're embarrassing yourself," she said. "You're embarrassing my father. In 9 days. In 9 days there is no wedding," Taejun said. "There is no merger. There is no Beaumont Bridge Capital." He turned his head half an inch toward Victor when he said the name, and Zuri watched the old man's face when the words Beaumont Bridge Capital left Taejun's mouth. The exact 3 words Taejun was never supposed to know. The 3 words she'd buried under a fake called Meridian Holdings. The name that had put her father in a cell and left him there to die. Taejun knew. He'd said it out loud, which meant somewhere in the last 9 days the lie had come apart, and he'd let her keep believing it was still holding. But he didn't look at Zuri when he said it. He gave her nothing, not a glance, and later she'd understand that the not looking was the gift. He was keeping her out of the blast radius, on purpose, 1 more second. Victor's grip on the Bengala had gone white. "You don't have the authority to—" "I have 61%, Taejun said. "I have had 61% since Tuesday." The number landed like a slap. 61. Victor's mouth opened and nothing came, and Zuri understood in a rush what had happened in the rooms she couldn't see, while she was reconstructing torn transcripts under a lamp, while she was checking 6 blocks for a tail. Taejun had been buying. Quietly, through shells and proxies, and the same kind of hidden channels the fraud itself had used, he'd been eating the Beaumont position 1 slice at a time, and now he owned the room, the merger, the whole rotten bridge, and the man who thought he was hosting a party was just a guest at his own funeral. The lawyer reached the doors, spoke 6 words into his phone. Somewhere in a tower 40 floors down and a city away, a trading desk moved. "Tuesday," Victor repeated. The word came out of him small. "Nobody moved that much stock on Tuesday. My people would have seen." "Your people work for the man who owns the float now," Taejun said. "They saw. They were told to keep seeing nothing." That landed harder than the number had. Zuri watched it go into the old man, watched him do the math on how many of his own faces in this room had already turned, and his eyes started moving across the crowd, guest to guest, like a man counting the exits and finding every one of them already had somebody standing in it. 2 of the somebodies wore gray. She'd stopped being able to tell where Taejun's people ended and the party began. Maybe that had always been the point. A woman near the windows made a noise, a short, wet sound, and sat down hard on a chair that a waiter caught just in time. Her husband was already 3 feet away, and walking, phone to his ear, saying a name into it that wasn't hers. That was how it went in the first 2 minutes. The money didn't leave in a rush. It left the way heat leaves a body, from the edges in, the guests at the walls thinning first, the circle around Victor going wide and then wider, until the old man sat in a ring of empty marble that everyone in the room could see, and nobody would cross. Zuri had imagined this 100 nights. In the versions she'd built under the lamp, it was loud. There was screaming, there was a gavel, there was somebody in a uniform. It wasn't loud. It was the small insect sound of phones and the soft scrape of 200 people deciding, all at once, that they'd always had reservations about the Beaumonts. That was the part nobody told you about a fall. Nobody pushes. They just step back and let the floor do it. Victor's phone rang first, then the woman beside him, a Beaumont board member in emerald. Her phone lit and buzzed against the clutch in her hand. Then 2 more, near the windows, then a dozen. The ballroom filled with the small insect sound of 100 devices waking at once, and the guests looked down at their screens, and the screens all said the same thing, and the faces all did the same thing, that slow tilt from confusion into arithmetic. Zuri didn't need to see the headlines. She'd written half of them in her own hand 6 months ago. The 41 million was in there. The dead port in Busan, the warehouse in Incheon that burned in 2017 and kept collecting 200,000 a month afterward. The children's charity that moved money and helped no children. All of it, going out in a filing, going out in a wire that killed the merger before it could ever be signed, going out under a single instruction relayed through a man in a gray suit standing by the exit doors. "Stop it," Victor said. He crossed the marble now, fast for a big man, Bengala forgotten in his fist. "Stop it, call them back, whatever number you think you saw." 41 million, Zuri said. It was the first thing she'd said in a full minute, and Victor turned to her like she'd fired it into his back. "It's yours," she said. "Not the company's. Yours." The 41 moved through Busan and Incheon and Rotterdam, and it all landed in the same 3 accounts, and every one of them signs back to a single name, and it isn't the board's name, Mr. Beaumont, it's yours. Victor's face did the thing she'd waited 19 years to watch a Beaumont's face do. It came apart at the eyes first. "You can't prove a name signs to a man," he said. His voice reached for the old authority and came back with half of it. "Accounts don't have faces. You'd need the incorporation, the original, the wet ink on the paper that started Bridge Capital, and that paper doesn't." "The first signature," Zuri said. Victor stopped. She said it slow, because she watched what it did to him, and what it did to him told her more than any account statement had. Somebody incorporated Beaumont Bridge Capital, a long time ago, before the charity, before Busan, before any of the money learned how to hide. One person signed the very first page. And the whole thing, every dollar, every dead port, every man who ever went to prison holding a loan he never took out, it all rolls back to whoever held that pen. She tilted her head. "You went pale, Mr. Beaumont. I didn't even say the name yet." The old man's hand found the arm of the chair and held it. He didn't answer. That was the answer, and for one long second, Zuri felt the ground under 19 years shift under her feet, because she had come to this ballroom hunting the first signature, and the first signature had just told her, without a word, that it knew exactly whose father it had buried. "Who are you?" he said. Not a question anymore. A man reaching for a rail that wasn't there. And Taejun answered it. "This is the woman who found it," Taejun said. He said it to the room. He raised his voice for the first time all night. Not much, just enough to reach the back where the phones were still buzzing, and every lens swung off Victor and onto Zuri, onto the stain, onto the wine-red front of a white dress a bodyguard had almost dragged out the service door. 6 months, alone. Everything on those screens right now. Everything. She pulled out of the books you built to hide it. You spilled wine on her tonight and called her a servant. He let that sit. She's the reason you no longer have a company to be embarrassed in front of. Zuri stood in the middle of the marble and felt 200 people rearrange her in their heads. She had walked in as the woman with the stain, the opportunista, the receipt he hadn't thrown out. She was standing here as the woman who'd brought the whole thing down, and she hadn't moved a single step to do it. She'd just refused to be wiped clean. "You planned this." Celeste's voice had lost its shape entirely now. She looked from Taejun to Zuri and back, and something ugly crawled up under her composure. "The two of you planned this together. This whole thing, the audit, you were never going to marry me. You were." She stopped, her eyes fixed on Zuri and narrowed to points. "You did this for her." "No," Taejun said. "You did this for her. You picked up the glass." Celeste threw it. Not at Taejun, at Zuri. The empty flute came off her hand in a flat, vicious arc, and Zuri turned her shoulder and it went past and burst on the marble behind her, and before the glass had finished skidding, two men in gray were moving. Taejun's, not Victor's. Zuri clocked the difference in half a second, and they had Celeste's arms, and she was screaming now, the pretty mask gone, screaming a word that wasn't quite a word, and the phones drank all of it. The two men had Celeste's arms above the elbow, and she twisted between them, and the diamonds at her throat caught the light and threw it wild across the ceiling. A luva had come half off one hand in the struggle. She wasn't screaming words anymore. She was making the sound a woman makes when the thing she built her whole face around stops working, and every phone in the room was closer to her mouth than any friend had ever been. "Take her to the car," Taejun said. "You can't," Victor said. "You cannot put your hands on my—" "Sit down, Victor." Taejun didn't even look at him. "You have about 90 seconds before the first call from your board, and about 9 minutes before the second one, and that one won't be your board." He finally turned. "You know which call I mean." The old man's legs found a chair without him deciding to. He sat. The Bengala tipped out of his grip and rolled, and Zuri watched it roll, and thought about the Cabo Secreto, the secret handle everyone whispered about, and she filed it away, because the audit part of her never stopped filing, even while the daughter part of her wanted to laugh, and the wanting to laugh scared her more than anything else that night. The quartet had never come back. The music stayed dead. In its place was the phone buzz and the low churn of 200 people, all saying the same three names to each other, and above it, thin and rising, Celeste's voice as they walked her out. He respected her. You understand? He looked at her like he never once looked at me like, and then, the service door swallowed it, and the sentence was gone, before anyone could hold it. But Zuri held it, folded it, put it in the inside pocket with the zipper. Taejun crossed to her. Close now. For the first time all night, nobody stood between them. "You knew the name," she said. "Low, just for him. Beaumont Bridge Capital. You said it. You've known. For 6 days," he said. "You let me keep the lie." "You had a reason to hold it," he said. "I decided the reason was yours to tell, not mine to take." His eyes went to the watch on her wrist, the old one, the one with the wine drop still on the crystal, the one that had cracked against a table 9 days ago, in a room he wasn't supposed to know about either. "We should talk, not here." "No," Zuri said, "not here." Behind him, a Beaumont board member was already on her feet, coming toward Victor, phone still lit in her hand, and her face said the 90 seconds were up. Around the room, the guests had begun the ugly, beautiful migration of people leaving a party they'll want to say they attended, backing toward the elevators, still filming, unwilling to be the last one photographed beside a corpse. The engagement of the season was 9 minutes into being the collapse of the year, and the 200 lenses that had come to eat a black woman with a stain on her dress were carrying out, in every one of their pockets, footage of her standing in the wreckage of the family that put her father away. Zuri looked down at her dress, The wine had dried at the edges to the color of old rust. She had refused to change it, refused to let a waiter blot it, refused the door. She'd worn it on purpose so the cameras would remember her. They were going to remember her. "There's a car downstairs," Taejun said. "For you, only you, no driver you don't pick." "I'll walk," Zuri said. He almost smiled, almost. 6 blocks, he said, and she went still. Because 6 blocks was the exact number. The number she'd never told anyone. The distance she checked for a tail every night. And there was only one way he could know it. And the knowing meant the not looking earlier. The keeping her out of the blast. None of it was accident. He had been watching her longer than 6 days. He had been watching her the whole time. The audit part of her filed it. The daughter part of her went cold. "How do you know that?" she said. Taejun's not quite smile went out. He held her eyes, and for a second it looked like he might answer, and then across the marble Victor Beaumont answered the second call instead, the one that wasn't his board, and whatever the voice on the other end said made the old man rise halfway out of the chair and go the color of the wine on her dress. He turned toward the windows and dropped his own voice, but Zuri read the shape of one word on his mouth before he killed it, a name, and it wasn't a board member, and it wasn't a lawyer, and the way his shoulders went told her it was somebody he was afraid of. She filed it. She was always filing. Around them, the room kept emptying, phones still lit, footage of a woman in a wine-stained white dress already halfway to 100,000 screens. Taejun stepped back to give the cameras their shot of the space between him and her. The space that said nothing was arranged, nothing was owed. She'd done this, standing still. Then he leaned in, one last inch. 6 days ago, I learned the name of the company, he said, low, only for her. Tonight, I learned yours means more than an audit. When you open what's inside that watch, and you will, come to me before you go anywhere with it. His eyes dropped to her wrist, to the crystal, with the wine drop drying on it. Some of what's in there has my name on it too. And under all of it, faint, from somewhere against her wrist, Zuri heard it again. The small, loose rattle inside her father's broken watch. The thing that wasn't the watch. The thing she still hadn't opened. As if the old man's shaking across the room had finally jarred it awake. She closed her hand over the crystal. She said nothing. And she walked out of the ruined party in a dress she refused to change, 6 blocks, alone, checking the dark behind her the whole way, carrying a rattle she hadn't cracked, and a sentence from a screaming woman she couldn't yet use, and the knowledge, brand new and cold, that the man who'd just burned an empire for her had his own name waiting for her inside her father's broken watch. The rattle was still going when she reached the second lock, and by the time she had both of them open, her phone had lit up 9 times against her hip. She let it. She stepped inside, killed the light she never left on, checked the dark behind her one more time, and only then did she pull the phone out. 9 alerts. Isaiah, all in a row, all the same 3 letters at the front. WTF, 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 then a link. Then, under the link, 4 words that stopped her hand on the doorframe. They made you a monster. She opened the link. It played before she was ready. There she was. Her, in the ballroom, in the white dress, wine down the front of her from collar to hip. Except the wine wasn't the story. In the clip, the wine was already there when she walked in, and the camera caught her lifting a glass of red and pouring it down her own dress, slow, deliberate, her own hand doing it, her own face turned to the lenses like she wanted them. Then the cut. Then her mouth moving, and words laid under her mouth that she never said. A flat voice engineered to sound like hers, saying she would burn the whole family down before she let them marry, that she'd wanted Taejun since the first meeting, that the audit was her revenge and the numbers were her invention. She watched it twice. She did not sit down. On the second pass, she caught the seam, the quarter second where the light on her shoulder jumped because two different frames had been stitched into one, and the little smear at the corner of her jaw where the fake mouth didn't quite marry the real face. Somebody good had built this. Somebody with the footage from 100 phones and the money to hire hands that clean. She texted Isaiah one word, who? The dots came up, went away, came up, then, everywhere, then, it's on the ones with the blue checks, the gossip accounts. 300K, already on the one I saw first. Then, a beat later, the part that mattered. Metadata's scrubbed, but the upload times are all inside 40 minutes of each other. This didn't leak. Somebody pushed it. All at once. Like a wire. Like a wire. She knew who moved things all at once like a wire. She'd watched him do it from a marble floor 4 hours ago. But that was Taejun. And Taejun had spent an empire to put her name in the clean column. And a man doesn't build you up in front of 200 lenses so he can bury you before you get home. No, this was the other hand. This was the daughter being driven to a car, screaming that he never looked at her the way he looked at Zuri. This was Celeste, spending the last chip she had left. She pulled up the account with 300,000 plays. The caption ran the way these things run, auditor or actress, you decide. And under it, comments already stacking, already deciding. Gold digger, knew it. Look at her face when she does it. Poor Celeste. And there, pinned to the top by the account itself, a second image. A still. Zuri in the white dress, the stain a black bloom across her chin up, her eyes flat to the room. Real. That one was real. They'd taken the truest picture of her whole night. The one where she refused to be cleaned, refused to leave, turned the ruin toward the cameras on purpose, and slapped a lie across it so the lie would ride on the back of something people could feel was true. That was the part that turned her stomach, not the fake. The fake she could tear apart pixel by pixel. It was that they'd used her spine against her. They'd taken the exact moment she'd been proudest of and made it the evidence. She set the phone face down on the table, over the reconstructed pages, over the pad that still said Beaumont Bridge Capital in her own hand. She breathed. Then she turned it back over and got to work. Because a woman who audits does not argue with a lie, she counts it. She scrolled the account's other posts first, the way she'd trace a shell company back through its filings. 3 weeks of nothing but the wedding. Venue shots, a ring, Celeste laughing into a champagne flute on a yacht, and then, last night, the graft, dropped into a feed that had never once mentioned Zuri Bennett, from an account that had spent a month worshipping the marriage that died at 9:51. People don't pivot that hard for free. Somebody had bought the reach the way you buy a warehouse in Incheon and then burn it. The pattern was the same pattern. It was always the same pattern with these people. They paid to make a thing look like an accident. She opened a second window and started a spreadsheet, because that was the only language that had ever kept her steady. Column 1, the accounts carrying the fake. Column 2, first upload time to the second. Column 3, follower count. Column 4, whether they'd ever posted about the merger before. By the time she had 11 rows, the shape screamed at her. 9 of the 11 had gone live inside a 4-minute window, and none of the 9 had said the word Beaumont in their entire history. This wasn't a scandal spreading, this was a payload dropping. One hand, many mouths. She built a folder. She screen recorded the fake at quarter speed and marked the seam, the jaw smear, the light jump on the shoulder. She pulled the real still, hers, the true one, and stripped its own data to prove it had come off a guest's phone at 9:51. The actual minute Celeste's wine hit the marble, timestamp clean, unedited. She laid the two side by side. Truth on the left, the graft on the right. Anybody with eyes and 30 seconds could see where one became the other. Then she stopped, because the audit brain had walked ahead of the frightened one, the way it always did, and it had found a door. If Celeste could push a lie across 100 accounts inside 40 minutes, Celeste had the footage. All of it. Which meant Celeste, or whoever Celeste paid, had been inside the camera pipeline of that ballroom before the night was over. That took reach. That took money that moved fast and quiet and didn't show up on anybody's books. Which was the whole game, wasn't it? Money that didn't show up. Her phone rang. Isaiah, voice, not text, which he never did, which meant he was past careful. She answered and he was already talking. Don't say my name. Are you home? I'm home. 2 locks. Nobody followed. Okay. He was breathing like he'd run. Z. Forget the video for a second. The video's a fire. We'll put it out. Listen to me. I got into the half of the transcript I still had. The pages that didn't rip. And I cross-checked the loan schedule against Dad's medical records. The prison ones, the ones we got in the release, after. Her hand found the edge of the table. Isaiah, he didn't get sick, Z. The apartment went very quiet. Even the rattle in the watch seemed to hold. His labs, Isaiah said. 8 months. Kidney, liver, the whole crash. We were told it was untreated hypertension, that he let it go, that men in there let it go. That's what they told us. That's what I believed for 19 years. His voice cracked on the number and pulled itself back. The values don't crash like that from blood pressure. I sent the panels to somebody who'd know. She called it heavy metal consistent, slow, something in the food, in the water, a little at a time, over months. She said if you wanted to kill a man in a way that reads as neglect, that's the shape it takes. Slow how, Zuri said. She was already reaching for the pad, already writing, because her hand needed to move or it would shake. Weeks between the first bad number and the last. Not a spike, a slope. She kept saying slope, like that was the word that scared her. Somebody with access to what he ate, every day, for the better part of a year. He swallowed. You don't get that kind of access in there for free, Z. Somebody paid for it. Somebody kept paying. She wrote the word slope and underlined it twice and did not let herself feel it yet. Zuri sat down, finally, slow, like the floor might not hold. Say it plain, she said. Somebody poisoned Dad, in there. Slow, so it looked like the system just let him rot. And Z, the line hissed. The dates. The first bad panel. It's 4 days after the incorporation filing on Beaumont Bridge Capital, 4 days after the first signature. Whoever put their name on that company first, they started killing him, almost the same week. The first signature is the whole case. She'd written that to herself on a legal pad in the dark, weeks ago, not knowing how right her own hand had been. Where's the panel now? She said. The originals. Encrypted. 2 places. One with me, one in the cloud you set up. But Z, listen, it's a copy. Partial. Some of the middle pages are gone. The ones the guy took out of your apartment, the ones that ripped. I've got the front and the tail. I've got enough to point. I don't have enough to prove. Enough to point is enough to scare somebody into moving, she said. And when they move, they leave a mark. That's how we get the rest. That's exactly what I'm scared of, Isaiah said. You pointing at people who kill quiet. She looked at the watch on the table, the crystal with the dried bead of wine on it, the thing inside it that still shifted when the building settled. Part of what's in there has my name on it too, Taejun had said. Only her, low, at the ruined party. Coordinates, she'd think later. Right now, she just knew there was a man who'd bought 61% of a lie to hand it to her clean, and she still didn't know which of his hands he'd used to do it. Isaiah. Stay dark. Don't send the panels anywhere else. Not to me, not to the cloud twice, nowhere. And the video, she pulled the folder she'd built back up on the screen, the truth on the left. I'm going to answer the video. Not tonight. I'm going to answer it once, and it's going to be the only time I have to. You're gonna post. I'm going to let the picture talk. He was quiet. Then, small, the thing he always said, the thing their father used to say when a clock stopped and everybody else wanted to throw it out. Wind it. I'm winding it, she said, and hung up before her voice could do anything she didn't want it to do. She did not post that night. She wanted to. Her thumb hovered over it, the folder, the seam, the timestamps, the clean true still against the dirty graft. Every part of her that had walked 6 blocks with her chin up wanted to throw it into the noise right then and watch the lie choke. But an auditor knows a number lands harder when the room has already been counting on the other one for a while. Let the lie get fat first. Let 300,000 become 1,000,000. Let the comments harden all the way into certainty, then break it. So she slept 2 hours in the chair, the watch in her fist, and when the gray came up over the old factory windows, she checked the numbers, and the lie had done exactly what she'd let it do. 1.4 million on the first account. The story had jumped the gossip pages into the real ones now, the ones with mastheads, auditor at center of collapsed Han-Beaumont merger, and every one of them ran the still, the true one, her ruined chin up. They ran it because it was the strongest image anybody had, and they had no idea it was the one piece of the whole story that would turn in her favor the second she told them what it was. She made coffee. She drank it standing at the window with the old factory light coming up gray over the river, and she thought about the slope. Not a spike, Isaiah had said. A slope. Somebody had sat across a 19-year distance and killed her father, one careful spoonful at a time, and then dressed the body in the word neglect. The same way they'd dressed a thrown glass in the word clumsy, the same way they'd dressed a stitched-together lie in her own true face. They had a grammar, these people. Everything ugly they did, they made it look like something that just happened. She set the mug down harder than she meant to. Then she opened one account, the one that was hers, that she'd never used for anything. 3 followers, all family. She posted 2 images and 40 words. Left image, the still they were all running, the wine, the chin, the flat eyes. Right image, 4 stacked frames from their own fake, arrows on the seam, the jaw, the light jump, the timestamp that proved the true photo was shot at 9:51, the exact minute the wine was thrown, by a guest, unedited, checkable. And under it, this is me refusing to leave a room after a woman poured wine on me. Everything laid over it is manufactured. The metadata is public. So is the seam. Count it yourself. Count it yourself. She almost deleted that line. It sounded like the pad in the dark. She left it. Then she put the phone down and did the thing that took more than posting ever could. She waited without watching. By noon, the thread had done what threads do when somebody hands the crowd a magnifying glass instead of a slogan. The reply guys who lived to debunk had found the seam themselves and were posting it like they'd discovered it, which was fine, which was better, because a lie dies faster when strangers get to kill it. The gossip account that pinned the graft went quiet, then pulled the post, which on the internet is the loudest confession there is. And the real mastheads, the ones with lawyers, started swapping the caption under the true still from auditor or actress to the auditor who exposed 41 million. She didn't celebrate. Celebrating was for people who thought a win was the end of a thing. This was the middle. She'd handed the crowd a magnifying glass, and the crowd had turned it on the lie, and that was good. But a magnifying glass cuts both ways, and now 200,000 strangers were staring at the true still, the one of her ruined and unbowed, and asking the only question that mattered. Not, is it fake? Who is she? What did she find? And the answer to that question was sitting encrypted in 2 places with the middle pages missing, and a man was dead 19 years for it, and somebody with a fortune nobody could see had just spent a piece of that fortune trying to make her the villain of her own father's murder. She knew what a cornered woman does when you take her last lie away. She reaches for the last true thing she has, and Celeste's last true thing was a family with money nobody could find. The knock came at 2, not the buzzer. The door, at the top of 4 flights, past 2 locks the landlord didn't know about. 3 knuckles, even, unhurried. She stood to the hinge side, out of the sightline, and said nothing. "It's Wansu," a voice said. "The lawyer. Tae-jun's. The one who'd said 6 words into a phone by the service doors and killed a merger with them. He sent me. Not with a message. With a box. Leave it. I can't. He said your hands, no one else's." A pause. "He also said to tell you a sentence, so you'd open the door. He said, Victor's money isn't gone. It's inside a book. And the book is why your father is dead." She opened the door. Wansu was younger than his voice, tired around the eyes, holding a hard-sided case the size of a hymnal. He did not step in. He set it on the threshold, on her side of the line, and stepped back like the floor there was hot. "I wasn't followed," he said, before she could ask. He made sure. "There are 4 cars between me and anyone. What's in it? I don't know. He doesn't tell me the inside of things. He tells me where to put them." He looked at her, and something moved behind the tired. "He watched the video go up last night. He watched you answer it this morning," he said. Wansu stopped, chose the words. "He said you didn't need his help to survive it. He said that's the first time he's been sure about you." "Sure of what?" "He didn't say. He said you'd know when you opened the book." He nodded once, at the case, at her, and went back down the stairs quiet as he'd come. She brought the case inside, locked both locks, set it on the table beside the watch and the reconstructed pages and the cooling coffee, and she looked at it for a long time before she touched the latches. Inside, foam. Inside the foam, a single object, and it was not paper. It was a device. A slab of matte metal the size of a paperback. A screen dead black, 1 port, no logo. Taped to the foam beside it, a card in a hard slanting hand she'd never seen but knew on sight was his. "This is Victor's ledger. Everything he moved off the books for 30 years. The real number, not 41 million. He thinks 2 people alive have a key. He is one. Your father was the other. The second key is not a password. It is in your hand. TJ." She read it 3 times. She turned it over. The back was blank. "The second key is in your hand." She looked at her hands. The right, the knuckles still tight from a stranger's wrist in the dark. The left, palm up, and the old scar there, thin, discreet. The one she'd carried so long she'd stopped seeing it. The one from a night she was 6 years old, and her father was fixing a stopped clock, and she reached for a spring she shouldn't have. "Wind it," he'd said, and put a bandage on it, and never let her near the workbench again. She turned the device to its single port. She turned her hand. She did not yet understand what a key made of skin could be. A scar's shape, a line's map, a thing her father had put on her body on purpose the same week a company was born to bury him. She only understood that the man who'd burned an empire for her had just handed her the box with his own name somewhere inside it, and told her she was the lock. The watch shifted on the table. The rattle rolled once and went still. She pressed her thumb to the port, palm open, scar to the light, and the dead black screen came awake with a single line of text, and the line was a name, and the name was not Victor's. She read the name once, then covered it with her palm before her eyes could keep it. The scar pressed the glass. The name was not Victor's, and it was not one she could carry yet, so she left it lit and dark under her hand, and reached for the thing beside it instead. The watch. Her father's watch, dead at 8:14, still rattling. She had waited 3 parts of her life to shake it open, and now her thumb found the case back and would not stop. The tool she needed was small, A jeweler's driver from the drawer, the one Isaiah left the last time he fixed her glasses. She braced the case against the wood and turned. 19 years of not turning came off in half a rotation. The back popped. Something dropped into her cupped hand that was not a gear. A curl of film, microfilm, wound tight, cut to fit the hollow behind the movement. Her father had gutted his own watch to hide it, and then he had strapped that hollowed heart to her wrist the same week the BBC was born, and he had told a 6-year-old to wind it. Wind it. She understood the joke now, and it was not a joke. Her hands were steady, and she noticed they were steady, and that scared her more than shaking would have. She had spent 19 years believing the watch was a relic, a stopped clock, a thing to hold when the nights got long. He had made it a courier. He had known they'd search a house, a drawer, a body, and never a broken watch on a grieving girl's wrist. He had bet her whole childhood on that. He had won. She set the film down on a napkin so her thumbprint wouldn't cloud it, and for a second she just looked at the numbers, at the pressure his hand had put behind the last word, and she let herself be his daughter for exactly one breath. Then she put it away, the way he'd taught her to put things away, and went back to work. She held the curl to the lamp. Numbers ran down the strip in a hand she knew from birthday cards. Not a message, coordinates, a latitude, a longitude, and beneath them one word, block printed, pressed hard enough to score the emulsion. Railhead. Her phone lit before she could type it out. Taejun. Not a text, a call. She let it ring twice, watching the watch bleed its secret across her table, and then she answered without a word, the way he answered everything. You opened it, he said. Not a question. He never asked what he already knew. How do you know what I did in my own kitchen? Because you went quiet the exact minute you'd have found the seam. A breath on his end, controlled. Zuri, before you read those numbers to anyone, before you drive anywhere, there's a thing I owe you, and I've owed it since the second week. Her hand went flat on the film. Say it. Not on a phone. Say it, or the phone is the last thing you get from me. Silence, and in the silence she heard him decide. A man that careful did not spend words he could keep. When he spoke again, the smoothness was gone, and what was under it was worse, because it was steady. I knew your father's name was tied to Beaumont Bridge before I ever hired you, he said. I knew Malcolm Bennett went to prison behind that shell. I knew the first signature enough to guess whose daughter would come looking for it. I didn't hire a stranger who happened to be the right auditor. I hired you because you were already aimed at them, and I let you believe it was luck. The lamp buzzed. Somewhere below the window, a truck downshifted. Zuri held herself still, and holding herself still cost her more than any move would have. She thought of every hour she'd sat across a conference table, deciding whether he'd earned the truth. She'd rationed it out to him in pieces, a gram at a time, like a woman feeding a stray she wasn't sure wouldn't bite. And the whole while he'd already eaten the meal. He'd let her ration nothing. He'd let her feel careful, feel wise, feel like the one holding the leverage, while the leverage sat in his fist the entire 6 months. 6 months, she said. 6 months. You watched me eat my heart out over whether I could trust you with the name, and you already had it framed on a wall somewhere. I had it in a box I couldn't open without you. A pause. That's not an excuse. It's the shape of it. She stood. The chair went back and hit the shelf, and she did not reach to catch anything. Her whole life she had measured people by what they hid and how long, and she had built a career out of the fact that hidden things always signed their names somewhere. He had signed his all over her. Every kind word, every car she refused, every 6-block count he shouldn't have known. You made me a tool, she said, low. You dressed it up in dinner and a decent handshake, but you pointed me at your enemy and pulled. Yes. No softening. That was the thing about him. He would not even let her hate a lie. And you'd have done the same, if the name were yours to bury, and I were the one holding the shovel. Don't tell me what I'd do. Then tell me I'm wrong. She couldn't, and they both listened to her not do it, and that quiet was the loudest thing in the room. The coordinates, he said at last. I know where they point. There's a rail depot upstate, a cold storage line Beaumont bought through the fake charity and never ran a train on. Your father hid a copy there before they took him. Whatever the middle of that transcript was, the part Minsock tore out of your hands, a version of it is sitting in a freight vault with your name on the manifest as next of kin. Her pulse moved. She hated that it moved for something he handed her. You want to drive me there, she said. You want to stand next to me when I open it so your name comes out clean. I want to stand next to you because the last 3 people who went near that depot for Beaumont didn't come back to their families, he said. My name can rot. Go with me anyway. She looked at the microfilm. She looked at the ledger still glowing under her other hand, with a name she had not let herself keep. She thought of Isaiah across the river, with half a truth and no way to prove it. She thought of a first bad blood test, 4 days after a signature. No, she said. Zuri, you had 6 months of us in the same room and you spent them managing me, so no, I'm not getting in your car. I'm not standing where you put me. She wound the film back into its curl, tight, the way the card said. I'll find out for myself what's in that vault, and then I'll decide what your name's worth. She hung up before he could make his voice do the thing it did. For a long minute, she stood in her own kitchen with the dead phone in her hand and the live film on the napkin, and she let the anger finish moving through her, because anger you didn't let finish came out later, in the wrong room, at the wrong second. When it was done, she was cold and clean and useful, which was the only version of herself she trusted with a locked vault upstate. She texted Isaiah 3 lines, the coordinates, the word railhead, and, if I go dark past midnight, send everything you've got, everywhere, don't wait for me. He wrote back in seconds, don't. Take him with you. Take somebody. She looked at that a while, then she typed, can't. This one's mine to open, and turned the phone face down so she wouldn't have to watch him argue with a woman who'd already decided. She wound the film back into its curl. She threaded it into the lining of her jacket, behind the seam, the pocket her father's coat had taught her to sew. She left the ledger dark on the table with its one unread name, because a name like that you did not carry into a place you might not walk out of. The depot sat where the numbers said it would, 90 minutes north, past the last exit with a gas station, and then past the idea of one. She left the car on a service road and walked the rest, gravel, then frozen mud, then the dead flat of a rail yard that hadn't heard a train in years. Weeds through the ties, a water tower with the paint gone, one long, low building of corrugated steel, cold storage stenciled over a door that someone had recently oiled, because it swung without a sound when she pushed it, and nothing in a place this abandoned should swing quiet. She should have read that. She read it. She went in anyway, because the manifest in her father's hand said next of kin, and she was the only kin left standing. Inside, breath fogged. Racks ran back into dark. Halfway down, one freight locker stood with its hasp already cut, and that was wrong too, and it was too late to be right about it. The lights came up, not all of them, just enough, staged. Celeste stood at the far end of the aisle in a coat the color of the walls, no red tonight, nothing to photograph. The diamonds were gone, the gloves were gone. Her hair was pulled back plain, and without the costume she looked less like a bride and more like what she was, which was her father's daughter down to the cold in the eyes. You walk exactly like him, Celeste said. I've seen the tapes. Chin up, slow, like the room owes you an apology. She tilted her head. It doesn't. Zuri's hand found her phone in her pocket. She did not lift it. She pressed the side, Twice, the way Isaiah had drilled her, and felt it warm. Recording. Let the cold room hold whatever this woman had come all this way to say. You cut the lock, Zuri said. You already looked. So either it's empty or you left it for me to find you standing over. I left it because I want to make you an offer, and offers land better next to the thing you want. Celeste stepped closer. Her heels made no sound on the concrete. She'd learned that somewhere too. You came for your father's name. I can give it back. You can't give what you took. I can undo it. That's better. Celeste stopped 6 feet off, hands loose, the practiced ease of someone who'd rehearsed being reasonable in a mirror. There's a file in that locker. There are 2 more copies my father never found, because he's a fool who trusts men in gray suits. Burn all 3, and I make 3 phone calls. A retired prosecutor remembers New Doubt. A journal runs a correction. Malcolm Bennett, exonerated. Cleared, his photograph on the good side of the story for the first time in 19 years. She let it sit. Your brother stops living in a sublet. You stop flinching at your own stairwell. All of it, for a match. Zuri kept her thumb on the phone, kept her face where her father kept his. Zuri let her look. Behind her face she was counting. Exits, distance, the length of the aisle, the oil on a door that should have rusted shut. A place this dead should have fought her at every hinge. Nothing here fought her. That meant everything here was arranged, and arranged things had a person standing just off the edge of the light, and she had not found that person yet. You'd give me back a dead man's honor, she said, if I hand you the thing that proves how he died. I'd give you the only version of him that helps the living. Celeste's mouth curved, not quite a smile. Sentiment is a tax, Zuri. You've been paying it for 2 decades. I'm offering to close the account. And, Taejun? Something moved behind Celeste's eyes at the name. Quick, gone. The file has him in it too. You know that. It's why he wanted to drive you. A step. Burn it, and you're not just clearing your father. You're deciding whether the man who used you gets to walk out of his own story clean. That should sweeten it. You're angry at him. I can smell it from here. Zuri thought about the deal. She made herself think about it honestly, because a woman who wouldn't look at the temptation was a woman who'd get caught by it later. Her father, cleared. His photograph turned over to the good side. Isaiah out of the sublet, and back into a life with his name on the mailbox. 19 years of tax, refunded in 3 phone calls. It was the exact price Celeste knew she'd been carrying, weighed out to the ounce, and that precision was its own confession. Someone had studied her grief long enough to itemize it. And that was why the answer was no. You did not sell the proof of a murder to buy the comfort of a lie about it. Malcolm hadn't hidden a watch inside a watch so his daughter could trade it for a headline. You spilled the wine because of him, Zuri said, flat, watching, not because of me. Celeste's chin came up 1/2 inch. It was the first honest thing her body had done. I spilled the wine, she said, because he crossed a whole ballroom for a woman in a stained dress, and he never once crossed a room for me. Her voice didn't crack. It went smooth and terrible. So yes, burn his name with your father's. Take the deal. Be free of both of us. The phone was hot in Zuri's hand now, and she had it all. Every word. The confession folded inside the offer like a razor in bread. She had come for a file, and she was walking out with a voice. No deal, Zuri said, but thank you for the recording. She lifted the phone. It was the wrong hand to raise. She knew it the instant she committed, because Celeste's eyes went not to the phone but past Zuri's shoulder, and the smile that had been rehearsed finally fully arrived. He came out of the dark between the racks. Not Minsuk. Someone she didn't know, big through the coat, fast for the size of him, and the aisle was too narrow to run. She got the phone into her sleeve before his hand closed on her wrist. The same wrist, always the same wrist, the one the watch had lived on. and wrenched it up behind her. The film in her jacket, the recording in her cuff, his forearm came across her throat from behind, and the cold storage tilted. "The phone, Marcus," Celeste said, unhurried, examining her own nails, as if the light were bad. "And whatever's in the coat, she hides things in the lining. It runs in the family." Zuri drove her heel down where a heel does damage, and the arm loosened a half-second, and she used it, not to run, because she couldn't, but to twist the phone deeper into the sleeve seam and slam her whole weight sideways into a rack. Steel shrieked. A box came down. His grip broke on the impact, and she was around him. 3 steps, 4, the cut hasp of the locker under her palm now, and she yanked it open on nothing. Empty. Of course it was empty. Celeste had come to make an offer, not to store a treasure. The vault was the stage, and Zuri was the show, and the only real thing in the building was the man closing the distance behind her again. "You were never getting the file," Celeste said, almost gentle. "There is no file here. There's just you, and a locker with your name on the manifest, and a very sad end for a woman who came looking upstate alone." She checked her watch. "You really should have taken the car." Marcus had her by the collar. His fist twisted the fabric until it bit her throat, and the aisle went narrow and bright at the edges. She got one hand to the locker's steel lip and held, and the holding bought her nothing but a second, and a second was still a second. She spent it the only way she knew. She pressed her cuff harder to her ribs, sealing the phone against her body, because the woman was going to take everything else, and Zuri had already decided which thing she'd die before she surrendered. The concrete came up to meet her knees. And then the door at the far end of the building opened without a sound. Someone else had oiled it, or he had. Coming early, coming ahead, and cold poured in, and Taejun stepped into the staged half-light alone. No men behind him, no lawyer at the doors, no proxies, no board, no phone pressed to his ear. Just the dragon at his throat, and both hands empty at his sides, and his eyes going once around the room the way they went around a ledger, reading it, pricing it, before they stopped on her knees. "Marcus," he said, quiet, the kind of quiet that had emptied a ballroom. "Let go of what belongs to her." Celeste turned, and for the first time all night the cold in her face cracked, because she had planned for a woman alone and gotten the one man she couldn't price. "You came by yourself," she said, and it wasn't triumph, it was the beginning of fear. "Where are your—" "I sent them the other way." He took a step in. The steel racks caught the low light along his shoulders. "I told them the depot was clean. I lied to my own people, so that when this room went wrong, it would only go wrong for me." His gaze flicked to Zuri, held, cost him something she could see even from the floor. "You said you'd decide what my name was worth." "Decided after." For a moment, nobody in the cold room breathed. Celeste's man held his grip and looked to her, and Celeste held her stare on Taejun and said nothing, because the whole night had been a script, and the one line she hadn't written was the man walking in without an army. "You lied to your people," Celeste said slowly, "to be alone in a room with me, and a body that hasn't happened yet. That's either love or stupidity." Her hand drifted toward her coat pocket. "In this family, we've never told the two apart." "Then you'll want to move that hand slower," Taejun said, and something in the flat of his voice made her fingers stop. "There's a version of the next minute where everyone drives home. It closes the second your hand comes out full." Marcus looked to Celeste for the word. Celeste's mouth opened. Zuri got her feet under her, phone still buried in her sleeve, film still in her lining, her father's whole hidden heart still on her side of the fight. And she stood up in a locker with her name on it, chin coming level, and let the recording keep running. Celeste's hand kept drifting toward the coat pocket, slow, the way you move when you think nobody's counting. Taejun counted. "Full or empty, Celeste? Pick now." She pulled the hand out empty. Not surrender, recalculation. Her chin came up, and she smiled the smile she'd worn all night, and she said the thing she'd been saving. You want the file. There is no file in that locker. You already know that. A beat. One. But there is a file, and it doesn't end where you think it ends. Marcus loosened his arm. Zuri got her weight square, phone still buried in the sleeve, recording. She didn't look at the locker again. She looked at Celeste's mouth, because Celeste was about to spend something she couldn't get back. Show him, Celeste said. Marcus reached into his own jacket and set a phone on the rack between them. Screen up. He tapped it. A recording started. Celeste's voice, weeks old, tinny off the little speaker. Coordinates, a date, and a plan laid out flat, no code. The merger closes, Taejun signs, and 3 days after the signature, Taejun stops taking his heart pills the way he's supposed to, because someone swapped the count, and the estate reads as natural, and the whole thing lands on Victor, her own father. The ledger, the shells, the poison, 8 months at a time, all of it filed under Victor Beaumont, who would be too busy being arrested to notice he'd been fitted for it. Taejun didn't move for a long moment. Then, quiet. You were going to bury me and frame him with the same shovel. I was going to inherit both of you, Celeste said. The empire and the sympathy. Grieving fiancé, betrayed daughter. 2 crowns. Zuri did the math the way she did all math. Line by line, no flinching. The heart pills. That was the tell that turned it from ugly to surgical. Somebody had to know Taejun's dosage, his pharmacy, his morning count. Somebody inside. The same somebody who'd known where a forensic accountant lived and that her father's name was Malcolm. 1 hole, 1 buyer, 1 shovel doing double work. How long were you going to grieve, Zuri said, for the cameras? A season? 2? As long as it photographed well. Celeste's smile didn't reach anything. Grief is just standing still and letting them look. I'm very good at being looked at. And Marcus, who'd just played his own boss's confession into the room, stepped back from Celeste, not toward her. That was the tell. Zuri caught it the same second Taejun did. Min-sok, Taejun said, not loud. The side door opened. Park Min-sok walked in from the dark he'd been standing in the whole time. Scar splitting the eyebrow Zuri had reopened in her own apartment weeks ago. He wasn't looking at Zuri. He was looking at Marcus. Say the rest, Min-sok told him. The part where you told her which of my men to pay. Marcus's jaw worked. Zuri watched the room resort itself in real time. The Kapanga who'd choked her wasn't Celeste's man at all. He was the leak, the one who'd sold the Malcolm connection, the one who'd sent the first intruder to her apartment with a name he wasn't supposed to have. The traitor on Taejun's own bench. Min-sok had let the whole night run just to hear Marcus say it into a room with witnesses. You had someone inside, Zuri said. To Taejun, not a question. I had a hole, Taejun said. He just told me where it was. 6 months of it clicked into place at once. The intruder in her apartment, who'd gone for the transcript and not the money, the name Malcolm, reaching people it never should have reached, the oiled door that opened without a sound tonight, and the one before it, not a leak. A tap, running the whole time, and Marcus's hand on the valve. He sold my father twice, Zuri said, quiet. Once to Celeste tonight, and once 19 years ago to whoever came before her. Once, Marcus said, from the floor, teeth tight. I only sold what I was told to sell. Save it for the room with the recording light, Min-sok told him, and tightened his grip a quarter turn until the man stopped talking. Marcus went for the door. Min-sok was already there. It wasn't a fight. It was a folding, one arm behind the back, the man on his knees in the same spot Marcus had put Zuri 2 minutes earlier. Symmetry Zuri filed and didn't enjoy. Celeste used the noise. That was her whole life, using the noise other people made. Her hand went into the coat and came out with the phone. Marcus's phone, the confession, and she was moving for the freight door before Taejun cleared the rack. "You want the recording?" she called. "Come get it. And bring your accountant. I have somewhere she needs to be." The door rolled. Cold air. Gone. Zuri's own phone buzzed against her wrist inside the sleeve, and for one wrong second, she thought it was Isaiah. It was. 3 words, and the floor dropped out. "They have me." Zuri had the jacket off and the lining open before Taejun reached her, microfilm in her fist, phone in her other hand, thumb already dialing the number that rang and rang. "She has my brother," Zuri said. Flat, because flat was the only thing that would hold. She left the locker empty because she didn't need the locker. Isaiah was the file the whole time. "Where?" Taejun said. "Give me a second and I'll know." She dropped to the concrete, put the film flat, put her phone's light on it, and read the second line under railhead that she'd skipped the first time because she'd been reading it as her father's fear instead of her father's instructions. Not 1 location. 2. The depot upstate, the palco, the stage, and a second set of numbers her father had scratched half a size smaller. A cold storage annex. The same dead rail line, 9 minutes south by the service road. "He didn't hide the copy where they'd look," Zuri said, standing. "He hid where they'd take a person. He knew whoever came for me would use the annex, because it's the only room on this line with a lock that still works." Her voice cracked once and she let it, then closed it. "My father built me a map to my own kidnapping, 19 years early." Taejun was already moving. She caught his sleeve. "No car full of your men. You said it yourself. You don't know which of them Marcus bought. We go quiet, or Isaiah's dead before the headlights hit the door." "Minsok," Taejun said. "Minsok stays on Marcus. I need Marcus talking, not dead, when this is over." She was surprised how fast the plan assembled itself, the way audits did, line to total. "And I need 40 minutes, and Isaiah's laptop, which is at my apartment, 90 minutes gone. So I'm not going to get Isaiah his laptop. I'm going to build the trap without it." She pulled the matte device from the jacket, Victor's ledger, the real one, the thing worth killing 3 generations for. She held it, thumb over the scar in her palm, and did not open it. "Celeste wants this," Zuri said. "She wants the ledger, and she wants it uncopied, and she wants me to bring it myself. So I bring her one." She looked up. A false one. Same case, same weight, a number that walks. "A tracker," Taejun said. "A ledger that phones home the second someone tries to decrypt it. Isaiah taught me the build 2 Christmases ago on a burner because he was bored." Her mouth did something that wasn't a smile. "Wind it," he said. "I'm going to wind it." She needed 40 minutes and a soldering pull and a dead phone to gut. Taejun had the phone. Minsok, before he walked Marcus out into the dark, had a folding kit in his coat that told Zuri more about the last 6 months than anyone had said out loud. She built the false book on the hood of Taejun's car by the light of the one working sodium lamp. Hands steady, because Isaiah's life required steady, and when it was done, it looked exactly like the thing Victor Beaumont had killed her father to hide. It weighed the same, it lied the same, and it screamed a location the instant anyone touched its guts. "Now the real one," Taejun said. Zuri buttoned the true ledger back into her lining, over her heart, where her father had taught her to keep the things families hide. "The real one goes where it's going after. First I get my brother." The annex door had a lock that still worked. Zuri knocked on it like she owned it. Celeste opened it herself, which told Zuri that Marcus had been the muscle, and Marcus was on his knees, 9 minutes north. Behind her, in a rolling chair with a zip tie on each wrist and his glasses gone crooked, sat Isaiah, alive, furious, mouthing, "Don't wait." Even as she walked in, there was a third figure in the corner Zuri hadn't planned for. Victor. Not robust now. Gray in a way that had nothing to do with his hair, coat over his arm, and the dark caned stick in his fist. He looked at Zuri and then at his daughter, and Zuri watched a father do arithmetic on his own child. "You brought it," Celeste said, eyes on the case in Zuri's hands. "I brought a trade." Zuri set the false ledger on the steel table between them, didn't let go. "Him for this. You make your 3 calls, my brother walks out that door, and you get 30 years of your father's money in one hand. Open it. You open it. It's keyed to a dead man's palm, not mine. A lie, clean, because the false book was keyed to nothing but a countdown." Celeste's hand hovered, and Victor stepped forward and put the cane's tip against his own daughter's shoulder, and there was a click Zuri felt in her teeth. The dark Cabo, the secret Cabo she'd filed away at the ball and never seen used, opened 4 inches of steel at the tip. He held the blade of his own walking stick against Celeste's collarbone. "Put it down," Victor said, to Celeste. "The recording, Marcus's phone, all of it." Celeste laughed, but it came out wrong. "You'd cut me!" "You were going to sign my name to my own murder," Victor said, and his voice had the rot of a man who'd finally read the ledger of himself. 30 years I moved that money to keep this family standing, and you were going to fold me into it like paper. Yes, I would cut you." His hand didn't shake. That was the horror of it. Zuri watched a man who'd killed her father decide, coldly, correctly, that his daughter was worse. Isaiah's chair creaked. Zuri moved to him under the noise, thumbnail already working the zip tie, breathing one word. "Window, back, on my go." Into his ear. "You spilled the wine," Zuri said, loud, to hold Celeste's eyes on her and off her brother's wrists. 19 days ago, you could have broken me 100 quiet ways. You picked a glass in front of 200 phones. Why? And Celeste, with her father's blade at her throat and her whole architecture collapsing, spent the last coin. Because he crossed the room for you. The blonde hair had come loose. She didn't fix it. Taejun. He never crossed a room for me in 3 years. He crossed a ballroom for a woman in a stained dress in 11 seconds, and I wanted to see him do it. I wanted to make him do it so I'd know. Her eyes were wet and furious. He respected you. He never once respected me. That's the thing I couldn't audit. The confession landed in Zuri's sleeve, on the phone, on the record. One motive, said plain, at last. Zuri didn't answer it. She'd learned that from her father, too. You don't argue with a signature, you file it. Now, Zuri said. 3 things happened in the same second. Isaiah's hands came free, and he threw his whole weight sideways out of the chair toward the back window. Celeste grabbed the false ledger off the table and ran it toward the door, and its guts jostled, woke up and started to scream a location to every device Isaiah had ever seeded across 3 boroughs, and Victor, who wanted the recording more than he wanted his daughter free, swung the cane down on her wrist to make her drop Marcus's phone. The phone hit the concrete. Zuri had it before it stopped sliding. Celeste spun with the false ledger clamped to her chest, and for one wild second she had the door and the dark and a 9-minute head start. Then Victor said her name. Just her name. Celeste, the way you'd say it to a 5-year-old at the top of a staircase, and she stopped. Not because of the blade, because of the voice. Whatever else 30 years of moved money had bought him, it hadn't burned that out of her, the reflex to freeze when her father used that tone. It cost her the head start. That was all Zuri needed. By the time the state cars came up the dead railroad, pulled there by a ledger that told the whole internet exactly where it was, Zuri was standing in the annex doorway with 3 recordings in her hand and her brother's arm across her shoulders. She didn't wait for a courtroom. She'd waited 19 years for a courtroom, and the courtroom took her father and gave back a corpse. So she did the thing the Beaumonts had taught her the value of. She uploaded, not the smear version, edited, framed, the whole thing, raw, 3 files with the seams showing, posted from her own account with 3 followers and a caption her father would have understood. Count it yourself. Celeste's engagement night jealousy. Celeste's plan to poison Taejun and frame Victor. Victor's 30 years under one signature. The first signature. The one on the incorporation of Beaumont Bridge Capital. Dated 4 days before the first bad blood test in a prison infirmary 2 decades ago. The medical slope. The name of the man who'd been fed heavy metal 1 meal at a time until a judge could call it illness. Malcolm Bennett. The internet did what internets do, but this time, the truth had timestamps, and the timestamps held. By morning, the serious papers weren't asking whether Zuri was an auditor or an actress. They were printing the words, wrongful conviction. Next to a photograph of a man in a vest with his sleeves rolled up, gentle eyes, the watch on his wrist that his daughter was wearing in the next photo down. Malcolm Bennett, exonerated, 19 years late. Posthumous, which is the cruelest word in any language, and still, the name came home clean. Isaiah watched the first correction go up on his phone in the passenger seat, glasses back on straight, and read it out loud twice before he trusted it. The court vacates the conviction of Malcolm Bennett. His voice did the thing voices do when a thing you carried your whole adult life gets lighter by exactly its own weight. Vacates, like it never was. It was, Zuri said. That's why they had to say it out loud. Celeste Beaumont was arrested in the annex, with the diamond necklace still at her throat and not $1 left under it. The fortune it had bragged about all night was frozen in the same filing that killed the merger, tied up in the same ledger that put her father in a second car. She wore her grandmother's diamonds into a booking room, and they photographed her in them, and the diamonds looked exactly like what they'd always been, paste over debt. Victor went in his navy suit, cane confiscated, the secret blade logged into evidence. He signed nothing. He didn't have to. His signature had already done all the talking, 30 years ago, on the first line of a company built to eat one man and hide the meal. 4 months later, Zuri Bennett hung a name on a door. Not Meridian, not anything borrowed. Bennett Forensic. Her father's name and her profession, the 2 things Beaumont Bridge had tried to take and failed. Small office, 2 windows, a used desk, Isaiah in the back running cable and complaining about the routers, awake at hours no one should be. On the wall behind her chair, 1 photograph, a man in a vest, sleeves rolled, the watch. The watch was on her wrist. She'd had it repaired. Not cleaned, repaired, the crack in the crystal left visible because some marks you keep. It ran again. It kept time from 8:14, the minute she was born, forward, like it was supposed to. There was an event that 4th month night, a charity thing, a real one this time, in a room with good light and worse champagne, and Zuri went because a woman whose name is on a door goes to rooms now. She wore something that wasn't white and wasn't armor. She was talking to a client's wife near a tall table when a waiter turned too fast, and a full glass of red went off the tray and down the front of Zuri's dress, collar to hip, a long dark stain blooming across the fabric, while 100 no-phones this time faces turned. For 1 heartbeat, the whole room braced for her to break. Zuri looked down at the stain, then she laughed, full, from the chest, the sound of a woman who has already survived the worst thing wine can do to her. A man beside her laughed too. Han Tae-jun, dragon at the collar, sleeves that hadn't been near a merger in months. He handed her a napkin she didn't use and said, "It won't come out." "I know," she said. The next morning, A courier brought a box to Bennett Forensic. Rigid, plain. Her hands, no one else's. On the label in a hand she knew, Isaiah brought it back to her desk and didn't pretend not to watch. Inside, folded once, was a white shirt cuff, his. The right one, with the old wine stain gone brown at the edge. The one from a ballroom 19 days into a war. The mate to the stain he'd taken off her dress with a pocket square and kept turned outward like a boutonniere. He'd kept it 4 months. He'd kept it clean of nothing. Under it, a card, 3 words. We match now. Zuri set the cuff on the desk beside the photograph of her father, next to the watch that kept her time again, in an office with her own name on the door, and her brother alive in the next room, and her father's name in the record at last, printed correct. She wound the watch. It caught and held and ran. Some names you inherit, some you clear, and some, if you count carefully enough and refuse, every single time, to be wiped clean of what was done to you, you get to hang on your own door in your own hand. Zuri Bennett closed the box and kept the cuff and went back to work. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Tell me, K-Fam, have you ever carried a stain the world tried to shame you for and refused to wipe it clean? Have you ever audited someone else's lies while protecting your own father's name in silence? And when the truth finally surfaced, did you have someone who caught your wrist before you fell? Mark my words, K-Fam. Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, loyalty, and silence, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.